Ingredient lists are mandated on the back of every packet of food so that you can know exactly what's going inside your body. But the problem is not just knowing what's in your food, it's being able to decide whether it's good for you or not. And with so many strange sounding chemical ingredients in our food today, that can be really tough. Especially with ingredients like sugar, which go by so many innovative names, many of which aren't even classified as sugar. So, how does one escape this marketing trickery and separate the good from the bad? All this and more in today's video of the Whole Truth Academy. First of all, there are three big groups of ingredients you need to be worried about. These are hidden sugars, added flavors and colors and preservatives, and three, natural sounding things which might not be so. Let's talk about each. First, hidden sugars. Food manufacturers know that all of us love sweet stuff, but they also know that all of us are trying to reduce sugar intake. So, over the last decade, they've discovered over 50 different forms of sugar that don't sound anything like sugar. I'm leaving a list in the video description below. Do check it out. Of course, keeping a track of 50 names is impossible. But here's a hack. All these sugars can broadly be classified into four buckets. These are 1. Sugar alcohols, 2. Glucose and HFCS, 3. Artificial sweeteners, and 4. Maltodextrin. That's maltodextrin. Don't worry, we'll go through each one by one. First, sugar alcohols. If you find any word in the ingredient list that ends in OL, it's a sugar alcohol. Remember the oat cookie packet from the last video? It had maltitol, which is a sugar alcohol. So are sorbitol, xylitol, mannitol. These are the most common examples. Now, sugar alcohols are sweeteners that usually have slightly less than half the calories of sugar. Why? Well, unlike sugar, which is table sugar, your small intestine doesn't absorb sugar alcohols well. So, fewer calories get into your bloodstream and the remaining get excreted out. But because sugar alcohols aren't completely absorbed, if you eat too much of them, you might get gas, bloating, or diarrhea. That's why you'll find this disclaimer acts as a laxative on some food packets that have sugar alcohols. Also, sugar alcohols are widely used in diabetic friendly foods because they have a lower GI or glycemic index than sugar. GI is a way to measure the insulin impact of a certain food. So, the higher the GI, the more harmful it can be to diabetics. Now, since the maltitol in that cookie has a lower GI than table sugar, they get to call it diabetic friendly, which is a problem because what matters to a diabetic is not just the GI of one food, but the combined insulin impact of all the food they're eating in a day. And they cannot calculate the combined impact because they don't even know they're having it. You see, unfortunately, as per FSSAI rules, sugar alcohols are not categorized as sugar. So the manufacturer isn't obligated to declare them as added sugar. So, yeah, if you have a diabetic in your family, tell them not to be fooled by the no sugar added label and to start calculating their total sugar alcohol intake. Second, glucose and HFCS. Now, most of us know that glucose is a form of sugar. But did you know that any ingredient ending in OSE or OS is a form of sugar too? So, glucose, dextrose, fructose, these are all sugars. And HFCS or high fructose corn syrup is the most prevalent and perhaps the most worrisome of them. So, let's talk about it. Regular sugar is a disaccharide, where di means two and saccharide means sugar. So, regular table sugar is actually a combination of two kinds of sugars, that's glucose and fructose, 50% of each. Now, HFCS, as the name suggests, is a sugar with higher fructose, 55% fructose and 45% glucose to be precise. And the big problem with it is that it's cheap. It's cheap because it's derived from corn, which is a much more prevalent crop than sugarcane. So once it started getting commercially produced in the 1970s, It very quickly replaced sugar across the global food supply chain. And the impact of this spread was unbelievable. Suddenly, foods that shouldn't have any sugar in them at all, from pasta to sauces to breads to juices, started having HFCS. Because hey, it costs a penny and it makes any food it touches tastier. Perhaps the biggest fillip for HFCS came when around 1980 the cola manufacturers replaced cane sugar in their drinks with HFCS. Now, HFCS deserves a whole video on itself, and perhaps we'll make it someday. But allow me to end this segment with a simple graph. This is the graph of US obesity over the last 50 years. Around 1980 is when HFCS got into their food chain. And since then, if you see, obesity has tripled. And similar trends are now being noticed globally too. Of course, a lot else has changed in these years. Modern life has become sedentary, parks and playgrounds have vanished, physical movement has diminished. But can this correlation just be a coincidence? I'll let you decide. Third, maltodextrin. This one ingredient is so common as a sugar substitute that I kept a separate category for it. First, let's memorize the word. That's maltodextrin. It acts the same as sugar, has a GI that's much worse than sugar, and yet it is not declared as sugar. No wonder that manufacturers who want to claim sugar free on their packets are going to town with this ingredient. And people are dunking sugar free chocolates and sugar free cakes and sometimes even sugar free protein powder and wondering why, even after making such healthy choices, they don't lose weight. And finally, again, think of the diabetics. They don't even know they're having something which is worse than sugar. Once again, that's maltodextrin. Mind it. And lastly, there's artificial sweeteners. These are the zero calorie sweeteners aspartame, saccharin, sucralose. These are the famous ones. Yes, they are zero calories, but they aren't as innocent as they seem. After all, they were discovered over 100 years ago. And remember that graph? They didn't even make a dent in the rise of global obesity. Why? More on this in a future video dedicated to artificial sweeteners. Next ingredient bucket to look out for is added flavors, colors, and preservatives. All the INS or E numbers that you see behind the food pack are either synthetic colors, flavors, preservatives, or thickening and stabilizing agents. INS means International Numbering System for Food Additives, and E numbers are just their European Union equivalents. The most important thing to know is what do these numbered foods do? First of all, the definition of E numbered foods is that they give no nutritional benefit. They are there merely to perform a chemical function. That function might be imparting a certain flavor, or binding, or anti caking, or preservation, etc. So, for example, if I want to enhance the flavor in my packaged soup, I might add E621, which is a flavor enhancer, also known as MSG or monosodium glutamate. Or if I want a cookie to look dark brown, even though it's made with maida, which is white, I'll put in INS 150 and voila, it'll have caramel color. And the color will trick your mind into believing that this is healthy. Because hey, brown is equal to whole grain is equal to healthy. Even whiskey, for God's sake, has INS 150A, brown color. So it's just the right kind of brown for you to feel it's premium. Now, not all chemicals are bad. Human beings created chemicals to make life easier, and some do just that. For example, baking soda or sodium bicarbonate, been used for ages in cooking and it's not bad. Secondly, changing the color and taste and texture of food changes our relationship with it. If something that has no blueberries in it starts tasting like blueberries, our mind starts thinking, oh, great, fruit, and starts having more of it. Same with something that isn't brown but starts looking brown, or something that becomes extra tasty with MSG. So, yeah, my personal rule is avoid numbers in food as far as possible. Keep the food real, let the body understand what it's having, and it'll do nothing to harm its own self. And finally, some natural sounding things that might not be so. On certain packs, you'll find this declaration: contains nature derived colors or contains nature identical flavors. Sounds natural, but here's what nature identical flavor actually means. It means that they are the chemical equivalent of natural flavors. They are chemically synthesized rather than being extracted from source materials. So, yeah, not exactly natural. There are similar natural sounding substitutes for sugar too. For example, in your no added sugar muesli, you might find malt extract or apple juice concentrate. Both sound natural and both are used to sweeten the product. But neither needs to be classified as added sugar. Technically, that's right. But you know this drill by now, so I won't belabor the point. Well, that's it. Those are the top things to remember while reading an ingredient list. If you found this useful, do hit the subscribe button so that you never miss out on future videos. For now, let's summarize what we learned about ingredient lists today. 1. There are three types of ingredients to be wary of: hidden sugars, added flavors and colors, and natural sounding things which might not be so. 2. Within sugars, there are four kinds to remember: sugar alcohols, HFCS, artificial sweeteners, and maltodextrin. 3. Finally, remember to minimize both INS and E numbers and nature derived or nature identical stuff. If it was natural, it'd be called natural. Happy clean eating and ciao for now. Wait, ये क्या हुआ? Sorry. Wait, यार ये I'll have to do it again. Okay. मैं ये वाली वीडियो रोकता हूँ फिर